Blood Money episode 67 with Dr. Peter McCullough. Honesty and truth at all costs with the most courageous man in medicine. Following that Blood Money episode, which happens at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, Gloves Off with Joy Gilbert at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss an exciting night of content on the America Happens Network. All right, so we're on the latest episode of Blood Money, and I have one of my favorite human beings on the planet, to be honest with you, Dr. Peter McCullough. How you doing, sir?
Good. Thanks for having me.
You know, this is really exciting for me because you were kind enough to come on our podcast back when, frankly, we didn't have much of an audience. You know, it was an early on episode, and you're very gracious with your time, with your honesty. And I remember at the time when it was, this was around the 2022 election cycle. I remember I met you at the Ahern Hotel in Las Vegas. You're part of a group of doctors there. And I remember at the time, there was a lot of doctors that were kind of like the A-team of the truther community in terms of what was happening. And, you know, cut to like a year and a half later, and I mean, you've become known as one of the most respected doctors. And even looking back at some of those old interviews, I mean, everything you said was spot on. There's not like one word that you said over the course of the last few years that one could say, oh, he wasn't right, he was incorrect. I mean, you were spot on so much. I mean, how does it feel after all this time? The attacks, the craziness, actually having stood your ground, said your truth, and really prevailed as one of the most respected doctors in the truther community.
What I did with COVID is what I did my entire academic career. I was always faithful in citing the data. I always give the first author and cite the data source so people can check it out. I've been humble in that my views have changed as the virus has mutated and we've learned more. And I've been careful not to be hyperbolic. I've heard so many hyperbolic statements. I've used a lot of common sense, as doctors should, and understand that medicine is both an art and a science. This was a novel coronavirus. And by those guiding principles, I've given more media clips than Biden and Harris and Trump and Pence and Fauci and the entire White House task force combined. I've actually had more media exposure, more analyses, more written analyses. I have 64 peer-reviewed publications on the virus, over 670 overall in the National Library of Medicine. And so in the last 3 years, I looked at this as the biggest health event America was going to face. And, you know, America needed its best doctors to step up. I've done that, and it's paid off. And people now, ask me to come on their shows, and we do review what was said. And it's very important, as if there's any lesson learned here, is America needs to upgrade its utilization of top doctors so we don't end up with a disastrous pandemic response.
Yeah, I mean, with all the, you going on all these shows, it's, I mean, that is on its own you being transparent. You very obviously being transparent, because every time you go on these shows, I mean, the hosts have an opportunity to attack you, to, call bullshit if there is bullshit to be called. But just the fact that courageously, and you've done more press than a lot of these political figures combined, I mean, that says something.
It's true. I went on ABC News. And they set up a studio here in Dallas. They wanted me on, and people said, "Oh, Dr. McCullough, ABC News is going to be antagonistic to you," and I'll never forget that. They asked me questions about vaccines. I said, "Listen, I didn't take a vaccine; it wasn't safe enough for me." And the interviewer seemed surprised. I said, "I'm just telling you, if it's not safe enough for me, it's not safe enough for my patients, and here's the reason why." And it got down to the use of drugs to treat COVID-19, and the aim of the show was to try to villainize ivermectin or make it sound like patients are craved in taking ivermectin. And there was a scenario. This was actually what the write-up is. If you actually go on the internet and look up Dr. McCullough, ABC's News, this was the quote that was written up. And what I said is, listen, if a patient goes to a clinic or an urgent care with COVID, if they weren't offered hydroxychloroquine, that would be okay, provided they were offered ivermectin. And if they weren't offered either one of those two and they were offered Paxlovid, that would be okay. And if they weren't offered Paxlovid, molnupiravir would be okay. And if they weren't offered that, the monoclonal antibodies would be okay. And we kept going and going. But what I said is not okay is to turn somebody away with no early treatment.
Hmm.
And in what the press is, we try to do is make it all about one drug. Treating COVID-19 has always been a multi-drug problem. We use 4 to 6 drugs in sequence combination. No drug is necessary nor sufficient. That takes all the energy out of propagandizing or trying to villainize a particular drug. Turns out every single approach that we use to treat COVID-19 has been undermined by the US government, starting with nasal sprays, starting with povidone iodine and hydrogen peroxide, colloidal silver, xylitol nasal sprays. It's in our book, Courage to Face COVID-19. We have an entire chapter on this, how the FDA and Federal Trade Commission tried to block those and inhibit any research. It goes on from there. People know in the first year of the pandemic, hydroxychloroquine was vilified by the FDA, undermined by fraudulent papers published in Lancet, New England Journal of Medicine. Ivermectin vilified the second year by the NIH and FDA, despite the positive clinical trials. Very important study in Florida, ICON study, very positive, still undermined. We had Paxlovid undermined by the CDC, molnupiravir never mentioned. Monoclonal antibodies repeated, despite buying enough for every person in the United States, they were repeatedly taken off the market for unclear reasons. And sadly, people didn't receive these life-saving drugs. We can go on, but all of early treatment was undermined. The only thing that was promoted from the very start was mass vaccination.
Mass vaccination. And this was a financial determination, right? I mean, it seemed like a lot of people in powerful places were making a lot of money off of this vaccine, and damn be the logic of it. Just, sell as many vax as you can, basically, right?
Well, treatments would, of course, only be limited to a few days and in a one-time use, but you could look at monoclonal antibodies, Paxlovid and molnupiravir as money makers. I think it was bigger than this. I think there was an ideology, a vaccine ideology, where the prevailing view is the one thing that all the governments wanted to do was to vaccinate in the world, and none of the governments in the world wanted to feature treatment. None of them.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know the viewers are well. Firstly, you're very well respected. We've been hearing a lot of different, I guess, alternative supplements to help people combat the spike proteins, the buildup of spike proteins. Some of the things we've heard about is, I guess, methylene blue, L-carnitin. I mean, could you talk a little bit about some of the ways that people who've either gotten the vax or who haven't gotten the vax that are scared about, shedding and the buildup of spike proteins could take measures in order to, be of better health?
It's now known that the spike protein, the spine on the ball of the virus, that's where all the danger is. That was engineered by U.S. research from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Ralph Barrick, Monique Vegetari. The NIH was involved in this. The work was subcontracted to Wuhan, China, the laboratory. So the spike protein was intentionally engineered by U.S. research plans done in China. This is now all out in the open. Full disclosure of documents, National Security Agency, FBI, NIH, Department of Energy. They've all basically capitulated that this is what SARS-CoV-2 is a U.S. product of bioengineering. And the spike protein is what contains all the damaging lethality of it. The 94% of Americans, if they took a vaccine, took a messenger RNA vaccine. That is a synthetic genetic code for the lethal spike protein. Couldn't have been a worse idea to take a vaccine that's coding for an uncontrolled production of the spike protein for an uncontrolled duration of time. It was a gamble of all time. Actually, I put that in writing in my op-ed in the Hill in August of 2020, titled The Great Gamble of the COVID-19 Vaccine Development Program. I was the only public figure, Ven, who questioned the vaccines before they came out. I was the only one.
Wow. And they made you pay hell for it, by the way. I know your story. They could watch, folks could watch Blood Money episode 18, I think it was, where you go into great detail about how they made you suffer for telling the truth. And, just have to pause there and say again, thank you. Thank you for being so honest from day one. History is going to remember you, Dr. McCullough, for being who you are.
But you know that the attacks have been very cowardly and anonymous. Do you know that not a single chairman of medicine, a chairman of infectious disease, not a single government official has ever contradicted me, ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never gotten a single email or text. They know they're wrong. And you know who's challenged me is anonymous fact checkers, kind of uncontrolled people out there. I wouldn't even know who they are. They're just making false counterclaims, and then lawsuits that have been frivolous.
Mm-hmm.
The American Board of Internal Medicine has attacked me. People who have no experience with COVID, no publications with COVID, no Senate testimony experience, and they attack me for statements made in the past on a policy they made in the future. It couldn't be worse for them.
Yeah.
So all of those who've attacked me, they honestly have melted away now.
It's
Because
so awesome. I mean, in your temperament, you're like the most mild-mannered person. You don't seem like you don't go into the highs and lows. At least, I mean, you seem like you've dealt with this kind of monstrosity in the best way it's possible to deal with it.
Well, thank you. But it's not about me. It's really about people who have lost their lives with the vaccine. Those who now have had blood clots, heart damage, stroke, disabled. I mean, that's really what it's about. It's been a disaster. There's
Mhm.
been 2 waves of injury. All the people who unnecessarily were hospitalized or lost their life with the virus because they weren't treated early, and now those damaged by the vaccines. 2 waves of injuries. The vaccines is first and foremost. The next hour after this, I'm going to testify at a meeting. I've got 3 minutes of testimony at the National Academy of Sciences and Engineering on vaccine safety. So I'm glad some national organizations are going to start to vet this. What we've learned is the vaccines have been catastrophic in terms of death. 3
Mhm.
sources of data, one by Pantazatos and Seligman from Columbia, Skidmore from Michigan State, and now the VAERS system using a standard underreporting factor. The first year of the pandemic, the estimates are now, the first and second years combined, the estimates are now 500,000 Americans plus have lost their lives with the vaccine. 500,000. This
Wow.
is an absolute tragedy. We lost 59,000 Americans in Vietnam.
Yeah.
This is an astonishing revelation. Our CDC is dutifully recording now up to 17,000 certified deaths within a day or two of taking the vaccine. Pfizer dutifully recorded 1,223 deaths within 90 days of release of their product. Most of the deaths occurred right there in the vaccine center. This is the
Wow.
most lethal biologic product ever released in human history. It should have been taken off the market in January of 2021. The word has finally gotten out, by the way. Americans don't want to take these vaccines. Only about 16% are taking boosters, according to the CDC. And the CDC, it looks like they're overcounting these
Mhm.
percentages. And 10% of nursing home workers are taking it.
Mhm.
Mandates are being dropped. Students are frustrated. Harvard, they still have a booster mandate for the
Mhm.
students, but the faculty don't have to take it. People are outraged.
Wow. Wow, wow. So we're talking about some of the ways that people could minimize the damage. So I had mentioned, and these are based upon interviews with, doctors and that sort of thing. I've heard methylene blue. I've actually been taking, what is it called? Chlorine dioxide.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
let's talk about that. I strayed from that question. Let's talk about that. Turns out the spike protein has some vulnerabilities. The Japanese have been probing it, and it turns out the spike protein has some proteolytic cleavage joints. The human body has a tough time breaking it down, but the
mhm.
Japanese have discovered that nattokinase, a natural enzyme produced by the fermentation of soy, that in fact it very efficiently dissolves the spike protein. It's done it repeatedly in high quality preclinical models.
Mhm.
Nattokinase is available as an oral supplement for a couple of decades now. It's safe. It's got some caveats in terms of bleeding and allergy in some, but
Mhm.
it's safe. And although I can't make any therapeutic claims, people are using nattokinase 2,000 fibrinogen link units twice a day as
Mhm.
a detoxification approach, recommending it clinically. The highest quality nattokinase we have is actually by the Wellness Company, twc.health.com. And that's all US sourced, very high quality product. And I tell you, people are driving to this and using nattokinase. Another approach is doesn't dissolve the spike protein, but tries to blunt its effect. That's a combination of N-acetylcysteine and bromelain.
Mm.
Uh, We know that ivermectin has some anti-spike protein capability, although most of the spike protein later on is within cells. That's the reason why nattokinase is so desirable. There is an intravenous product um, of a serine protease by the Japanese, from a Japanese river worm. That will be looked at carefully. No data right now on chlorine dioxide, nitric oxide, infrared. I think some of those are much more effective for the SARS-CoV organism itself. But if I was to sit here today and say, listen, what's going to be the lead approach on detoxification? I would say nattokinase.
Wow, wow. And is this something that you could get without a prescription, just over the
Yeah,
counter?
yeah, you can go to
Wow.
Wellness Company. It's a cell phone app or on the internet, twc.health.
Yeah.
.com, and you'll see the spike support product. It's far and away the lead product worldwide.
I'm curious. I mean, you might have already done this, but have you set up a store for people that are interested in getting, one place where all these products to deal with the spike proteins are?
I took a position as the chief scientific officer of the Wellness Company, a nationwide alternative healthcare company.
Hmm.
It has verticals for nutraceuticals and supplements, health and wellness material, access to doctors by telemedicine, community dental clinics. So it's an ideal product for people without healthcare insurance. It's less than $10 a month, so it's really worth it. And people use it in supplemental to their insurance. Wellness Company, twc.health.com. That's the store. That's the kind of the go-to place for healthcare now. And they've been very strategic. They have a operating agreement with myfreedoctor.com, another nationwide system. And nowadays, people are frustrated. They don't want to go to doctors who are going to ask them to take a vaccine. They're going to Wellness Company in large numbers.
Yeah, people are terrified. I mean, I had a friend that's going to take had to take her daughter to the hospital, and she was terrified that they're going to give her the COVID jab. She's gone 3 years with getting forced and really resisted, and she's like, the last thing I want is my daughter sleeping. I mean, people are genuinely terrified that without their consent, they're just going to get jabbed while they're sleeping. I mean, these are the kind of stories that are going around.
But them, it's true. I have firsthand report from Canada that some
Hmm.
Canadian hospitals have standing orders for COVID-19 vaccines. That means someone comes in sick, they're going to get jabbed no matter what,
Wow.
without their consent. So it's just going to happen. So people are terrified at the hospital right now, and the vaccines have to come off the market because the vaccines are the real source of terror.
Big time, big time. So, it's become very obvious that we have a healthcare crisis in this country. I mean, from my reading, and tell me if I'm incorrect here, is that basically the pharmaceutical industry, from the day that somebody enrolls in medical school, pretty much takes over. They start pushing their agenda. Doctors are kept in the dark as far as alternative methods. There's definitely a lack of holistic education. The traditional doesn't seem to be working. I mean, the whole thing seems like a mess. Is there a fix to this? What is and so is there a fix to this? What is the fix to this? And are we going to come out of this mess? Are we going to have like a healthcare system that actually cares about our health versus the profit of the pharmaceutical companies?
We can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. We clearly need conventional medicine for the big ticket items of cardiovascular disease, cancer, yeah, surgeries for appendicitis and gallbladder. I mean, the standard total hip replacements, and these are major advancements. So we need the conventional medical system, but people are interested in alternatives, and COVID is an area where it was almost all alternative medicine. Great interest in diet and lifestyle, what people can do to
Hmm.
improve their health. Smoking's way down. Alcohol use is way down in the United States. So I think it's going to be a blend.
Hmm.
We can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. But the doctors who failed to treat their patients with COVID and then suggested, if not forced the vaccines on their patients, those doctors owe their patients and the world an apology. And I don't know how they're going to move forward. I'm not seeing too many doctors coming out yet and apologizing. That's all to come in the future.
Well, I mean, it's like legal liability too. If they apologize, aren't they basically saying that they might be culpable in potential manslaughter? I mean, is there that issue of why they're not really saying sorry?
It could be they could feel like they're too deep into it, like some terrible situation like Nazi Germany doctors. However, the broad liabilities of the PrEP Act and CARES Act almost covers anything with respect to COVID. So I don't think they're going to be personally liable. They are losing a lot of patients because they're angry. And I think America and the world we're amazingly forgiving people. If doctors would come out and just come clean on this and say, listen, they took a wrong approach to this. Many doctors took the vaccine themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and they greatly relate. I'm in practice. I have doctors who took the vaccine. They're seeing me in practice, and they regret taking the vaccine.
Wow.
So, they have, doctors are going to have to come forward on this. This cannot go on. It's not going to end well for any doctor who's still supporting the vaccines.
Wow, wow. And so as far as like the individuals like Ralph Barrick and people that made this possible, is there comeuppance for that? Is there, we keep hearing from the Thomas Renzes of the world, like Nuremberg 2.0, these people need to be held accountable. They knew what they're doing. Is there going to be a comeuppance in terms of this catastrophe that happened?
I think many years in the future, the justice phase is going to take many years in the future. Ralph Barrick, who clearly helped devise and create SARS-CoV-2, he's been the most silent person in America now for 3 years. He should be on. He should have been part of the coronavirus task force. He should have been, up on Capitol Hill all the time, helping us get out of this disaster. He created this monster. He should be helping us get out of it. Instead, he's completely quiet. Anthony Fauci, which almost every one of his actions made this problem worse. On his departure notice on the NIH website, there's no mention of COVID, as if
Wow.
it doesn't even exist. I mean, you can tell people are living in some type of never land here.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So what's, this last 3 years has been, I'm sure, a huge evolution in terms of where you were, where you are today. What does the future hold for you personally? Is it a lot of testimonies? Is it a lot of meeting with politicians and telling them what happened? I mean, how do you see the next year or two in terms of what's on your schedule?
I've morphed into a public figure. That's now part of my life. I've had to move my practice twice. I'm an independent practice. I'm very active as a researcher and a writer. So
Mhm.
I've had to redefine myself in the pandemic, but not unlike other people who've lost businesses or had to adapt. Everyone's had to adapt. But because of my extensive research and public statements and being on the right side of history, I anticipate I'll be very involved in investigations, House, Senate, special
Wow. Wow.
counsel. I'm an expert in over 100 cases right now as a pro bono expert. It was my testimony and that of my fellow Fox contributor, Jay Bhattacharya, that took the case all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States and overturned 4 out of the 5 Biden mandates. So I've testified 3 times in the U.S. Senate. I co-moderated the last 2 panels. America in Washington has learned to rely on me. It's just sad that I wasn't involved from the very beginning. Myself and doctors in my circles, we could have organized into teams and we could have saved America from this problem instead of
Mhm.
making it much worse.
Yeah, yeah, you're almost playing now. It's like you're playing cleanup, and in that process of playing cleanup, are you finding that the politicians out there are a lot more receptive than they were? Are they more receptive as Republicans or Democrats starting to be more receptive? I mean, what does the climate look like out there?
They're trickling in more receptive. There's been some stalwarts from the very beginning. Special note to Senator Ron Johnson. He saw this clearly.
Yeah.
Rand Paul is partially on track. Roger Marshall from Kansas on the Senate side. Republicans in the House, Chip Roy, Comer, others are coming along, but it's still too few. Many are still, clouded, and they need to come forward. It's interesting because the most extreme left, which previously had the strongest affiliation with the ACLU and civil liberties and free speech and my body, my choice, the extreme
Mhm.
left has now become authoritarian. You never hear ACLU mentioned, you never hear civil liberties. You hear about a constant drumbeat of taking away freedoms
Mhm.
and forcing vaccination. New York State Governor Kathy Hochul, just a few days ago, has appealed and still tried to keep alive the New York State concentration camps for vaccination. It's stunning.
Wow.
This is in America, and that's what Hochul wants. Now, on the extreme right is preoccupied with January 6th and
Mhm.
election integrity, and they're kind of defocused. Many on the extreme right took the vaccines as well,
Mhm.
but there are people in the middle, I think, on both sides who are moderate, who are saying, "Listen, this doesn't make sense to have people lose their life or develop blood clots or heart damage with a vaccine that doesn't work. That this got to stop."
Is it true that every person that takes this vaccine is getting myocarditis?
The published data, two papers by one by Lepesic, the other one by Mansugian, collectively indicate the rate of heart damage is about 2.5%.
Mm,
Now, it's possible everybody's getting some vaccine in the heart and the brain, since we know it goes everywhere. This is a
mhm,
terrible thought. People took these shots to have this stuff up in the brain. It's genetic. It's installing the code for the spike protein. We don't know how much will be produced over how long, whether or not there'll be problems with mental function years in the future, or heart failure or blood clots. We don't know. It
mhm,
doesn't look good at all. But within a few days of taking either shot 2 or the booster, it's 2.5%. That number's too big.
mhm. Wow. Is it when you say it doesn't look good at all, I mean, there's been again, other doctors, lawyers basically flat out saying there's no way this was not a depopulation agenda. What do you say to those people?
It's impossible to assign motive. Somebody who's still promoting the vaccines today, what is their motive? What do they really think is being accomplished?
Mhm,
Many have said, listen, these things are so bad that the motive must have been nefarious, something more than money or power. It's just impossible to assign motive. People have to ask the question. I mean, someone should ask Albert Bourla of Pfizer.
mhm.
Uh, what do you think about 1,223 deaths that occurred with your product in the 90-day post-marketing Pfizer data? What do you think about those? Can you give us your thought pattern? Why would you still promote these? There
Mhm.
are no randomized trials, prospective, double-blind, placebo-controlled, that show vaccines reduce mortality. Um, there's no valid observational data. And ask him, why is he still supporting it? Usually, what you'll hear is they'll say, "Well, the CDC says to do it,
Mhm.
or the FDA says it," and everybody points to somebody else, but no one themselves will actually say why they want it. When you ask a company, "Why do you still have a mandate?" they'll say, "Well, the CDC recommend." They just point to somebody else.
Mhm. It's so crazy. It's an epidemic of cowardice. I mean, doctors, I thought, my dad's a professor, by the way, so I know that his whole life he's been involved in research in some form or another, and again, professor of economics, so he's always been researching. Why is it that there seemed to be a crisis of doctors not doing their own research and just going along with what the CDC said, even when there's lot of clues. I mean, with these doctors in the hospital that are giving remdesivir and seeing the same repeated thing happen over again, death, 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 death. I mean, these doctors didn't have a sense of curiosity. Wait a minute, let me go do my own research. And how do we fix that issue? How do we bring back doctors that are curious and doing their own research?
When it comes to remdesivir, doctors just needed to go to the World Health Organization.
Hmm.
November 4th of 2020, WHO, after a meeting, scientists, critical care doctors, ethicists, they declared remdesivir is contraindicated. Do not use it to treat COVID in the hospital. WHO, they revisited that in May of 2022, and they concluded they were right to begin with. Remdesivir never should have been used beyond November of 2020. All doctors need to do is look at the WHO. States, Health and Human Services departments should have pulled remdesivir off the shelf. They
Hmm.
shouldn't even allowed it to be used. Instead, HHS incentivized the use of remdesivir if hospitals use it. They got a bonus on the overall hospital stay. Since when do we use one drug and we get a bonus for the entire hospital stay? It doesn't happen for any other products.
Yeah.
And so these perverse incentives, these wrong decisions. And when I've testified, let's say in the Texas Senate, I brought up remdesivir. I said, listen, this occurred on your watch. You should have held emergency meetings when the WHO declares something should not be used. Hold an emergency meeting and get the stuff off the shelves. And the senators just looked at me absolutely slack jawed. They were just stunned. They were
Stunned, I mean stunned, but like stunned meaning like paralyzed stunned or like
paralyzed, stunned. They look like they had seen a ghost. Like, how could you be so oblivious, so inept to public safety? That's just remdesivir.
I mean,
And
that's the thing that's mind-blowing is how could so many people drop the ball like this? That's I just don't understand how did all these people suddenly become incompetent? How they start relying on other parties as opposed to using their own critical judgment.
but that's what you'll see consistently. I mentioned I'm involved as an expert in about 100 lawsuits. When you
Mhm,
look at the experts on the other side that say we should vaccinate, the only thing they say is listen, the CDC says we should do it.
mhm.
They're not coming up with their own independent analysis. When was the last time you saw a chief of medicine get on the news and say, listen, I believe myself that people should take the vaccine, and here's the reason why? Give
Yeah,
justification. No one.
yeah.
No one does that.
Yep.
No one
It's all these
actually gives.
shadowy, nameless people,
Right,
anonymous,
right,
fact checkers.
right.
But
Well, where's the
how do we
where's
fix
the
that? How do we fix
accountability?
that?
Yeah, where's the accountability of someone who really thinks the vaccines work and are safe to come out and discuss it? We've challenged it in my Senate testimony. We invite all the public health officials to come. They get invited far in advance. We have chairs there for them. None of them will come up and face me or any of the doctors in my circles to have a discussion on this. It's like
Wow.
we
Wow.
know that they know that they know that they're wrong.
Yeah.
They're wrong.
And you have the courage to stand up for the truth that you're bringing to the table, but they don't have the courage
Right.
to sit there and I mean, that alone is a smoking gun, that they're full of shit. I hate to say it, you know?
Or how about this one? How about for these university vaccine mandates? When was the last time you saw a dean or a provost say, listen, it's my idea. It's
Mhm.
my idea. I'm going to take responsibility for this.
Wow.
Any company or university that has vaccine mandates, nobody knows where they come from. Nobody knows who's responsible. No one claims to have responsibility.
Mhm.
Nobody says they're sorry when, let's say, a young student has myocarditis, is damaged. It happened with student Simone at Northwestern in 2021. She takes Moderna, clearly gets Moderna myocarditis, goes all the way into heart failure, needs a heart transplant at Northwestern, and she dies afterwards.
Wow. Wow.
No public apology from Northwestern,
Wow.
no reconsideration, no in memoriam, nothing. And that vignette is well documented, and social media, on the internet. Joe Rogan had that when I went on his podcast. Joe Rogan had the vignette, not me, about
Wow.
Simone. He wanted to know about it. And so this is the strangest behavior, a lack of accountability, a lack of compassion or concern. Simply
Wow.
take the vaccine, suffer, potentially lose your life, or get out of the organization. And you know that some universities, believe it or not, even changed the rules so students couldn't transfer their credits to other universities.
Wow. 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 This is just I mean, again, how do we somebody well, I interviewed a doctor. He said literally because I was like, 1 out of 1,000 doctors seem to have done the righteous thing. And what this doctor said, actually, we're going to air this interview next week, which is that no, it's really 1 out of 10,000. 1 out of 10,000 actually did the right thing. He's like, it's closer to that number. I mean, how do we fix this? How do we fix it so next time it's not 1 out of 10,000? Are we doing something wrong in our education and the way we're training these people? I mean, what's going on where because that's a very small number to stand up to the truth, especially when there's people dying. That should scare the shit out of people. But how do we
It's
fix
true. I recommend the next time no government intervention at all, none.
it?
The
Hmm.
government should have nothing to do with it. The CDC traditionally just does outbreak analysis, data analytics, and in vitro diagnostics, period.
Wow.
The government agencies have no intervention at all, none. Let the doctors take care of it. We'll self-organize. You're right. The numbers, there's 1 million doctors in the United States. We estimate that about 500 carried the whole country for 3 years. There's about 500 right now that actually recognize these FDA acknowledged vaccine injuries,
Yeah.
myocarditis, brain damage, blood clots. This is all FDA recognized it. The other doctors are gaslighting patients. Patients come in with heart damage and they'll say, no, but it's not due to the vaccine. or a blood clot. And it's
Wow.
obviously due to the vaccine. I mean, the FDA says it's due to the vaccine. So these doctors are in some type of groupthink.
Yeah. Yeah.
And remember,
Friends.
most of these doctors took the vaccine themselves, and they're still taking it.
Yeah.
So they're in a sense, they're in the form of formation. They're in some form of psychological lockstep with one another. It's scary. Patients have lost their trust. You know, we know fully 25% of Americans did not take the vaccine. That's a
Mhm.
big number. That came out through the COVID States Project recently from Northeastern University and Harvard. The CDC previously said it was only 8% unvaccinated, but CDC was double counting people if they didn't have their vaccine card when they came for a booster. So the CDC estimate has to be thrown out. It's fully 25% of Americans didn't take the vaccine, and boy, are we happy we didn't take it.
Big time, of course. So, Dr. McCullough, in closing, is there anything you'd want to say? The mic is yours, the websites, what you're doing, coming up, pretty much it's all you.
Well, thanks for following me. The big news is I'm going to start a TV show here in Dallas with my co-author, John Leake. It's called The Second Opinion AFN Network. Terrific. We're going to get going next month. Follow me on my Substack, Courageous Discourse, now with voiceovers, my podcast, America Out Loud Talk Radio, McCullough Report, book, CourageToFaceCovid.com, and then central source for everything, including to the wellness company. Go to my website, petermcculloughmd.com. I've done everything I can as a practicing doctor and a public figure to help America, help the world get through COVID, now get through this wave of vaccine injuries and close the crisis. Thank you so much for having me on the program.
Thank you, sir. You are an American hero. Honestly, I'm always humbled to have you on our show because you really, from day one, you stood up to this insanity, and history is going to remember you, sir. History is going to remember you, and you deserve it. You deserve every ounce of respect, admiration that's coming because I know this was a tough journey. We all know what it feels like to be attacked, and you stood for the truth, and we tremendously respect you for it, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, sir. And for the viewers out there, check out americahappens.com for our latest episodes of Blood Money and all our other podcasts. We will be having the Joey Gilbert podcast. Mindy Robinson has 2 shows with us. Gianna Michelli has the awesome State National University. And of course, a lot more content coming up in the next few weeks as we bring on new talent, new shows. And so I look forward to seeing you on americahappens.com. Thank you for joining us for the Blood Money podcast, and see you on the next episode.